Welcome to the Tyler Dickerhoof Show. It's your host, Tyler Dickerhoof, Newswire. Today with producer Alex. I'm on the road. He's at home. We just got done with the Impact Driven Leader Summit last week. For all of you watching that attended, thank you so much for being there. If you weren't able to make it, we will shortly have the video recording available. Go to IDL Summit. We'll have a splash up there where you can sign up to get notified once that is released. But China. We're talking about China today. Trump just announced within hours ago that he came to an agreement with China based upon trade tariffs. So Alex, let's jump in there.
Yeah. And just to mention, if you're listening on YouTube, we'd love if you guys could subscribe and we'd love and appreciate that so much. So you can get notified every time, we go live on Mondays and new episodes on Wednesdays. So 90-day tariff agreement. The thing that's not included, which I heard, is also steel. So the steel tariffs are not included within that.
Okay.
And the president did say, they were going to make a deal, and the market, because we always can correlate this to like market reaction, and the markets got hammered over the last 2 months, and now you're seeing a day like today or over the last couple sessions where the market's bouncing back, and again,
I mean, here's my take on. Let's hit the markets real quick. As of right now, I'm just pulling up the stocks. If I can get it on my phone, hold on. Stocks right now, as of real time, stock market is up 2,700 points. We've rebounded quite a bit since the low about a month ago. Here's my take on it. People are going to use that news however they can. It's a volatile market that loves volatility because that's how people can make money. The reality is nothing has changed in the last 2 months. It's all based upon perception of what's going to happen. Like even, in the last 10 days, 2 weeks, a lot of the fear of tariffs never really occurred. Of course, people put on like, oh, these tariffs are coming. And I get it. As a business, you have to, at some point, apply it, knowing that you're going to have to bring in new product at a higher tariff rate, whatever else. But I think it's just kind of, again, people want to use any news to get up in arms about whatever.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess we'll see what happens. This is a reset. The negotiations are like reset. So right now, this is like what's coming.
What do you mean? Like, describe that more.
So I'm reading this directly from online from the BBC, which I thought,
Oh, there you go. All right.
Yeah, pretty reliable resource. So the U.S. President Donald Trump says the U.S. has achieved a total reset in relations with China after both countries agreed to reduce tariffs on each other's goods for 90 days. And this is what it's going to be. U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports will fall from 145% to 30%, while Chinese tariffs on U.S. goods will fall from 125% to 10%. And it's a bigger cut than it was expected, and then they'll renegotiate what the new tariffs. There will be tariffs put into place, regardless. But it's just like, what will they be? How?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that goes back to what it traditionally has been. So people read into it, it's like, oh, there's 30. No, we've had tariffs. Like those aren't. And one thing I did pick up is there's an additional 20% in there based upon fentanyl products. That's the major hinge point. Again, does any of this surprise really when you stop and realize like this is what like the game plan the whole time?
You said it.
I mean, we're 125 days into this presidency, give or take a day. Don't take me verbatim for that. But look what's happened. We have stuff going on with Ukraine and Russia. You have, the EU that's coming to the table saying we have to create better trade relations. We're trying to figure stuff out with Canada. Canada has agreed to pay their part in NATO. They've been worse than a dad who hasn't paid child support. Like, that's that bad that they've just not paid anything. Yeah. Like, I think they've paid 1% of what they're due to pay into something like horrible like that. And they're kind of like when Mike Carney met with Trump last week, it's like, yeah, we'll start to pay our part. Well, yeah, duh.
Yeah.
Like everyone else is carrying you. You're delinquent. And now we come to this agreement with China. One of the reports that I got, and this is widely reported, this isn't just one source, is that China was like, yeah, we've been screwing over the US for years, but we knew Biden wasn't going to do anything about it.
I mean, yeah, that's agree. I do believe we did have weak leadership in the previous regime that may have led to some of this, the U.S. being taken.
Let's just talk about that real quick. Was it? Let's define weak leadership.
I think, in my opinion, weak leadership is someone that isn't consistently showing up to, especially as a president, to tough negotiations and being clear and transparent with its people about what's going on and what's happening. You're just given vague, nuanced answers, and there doesn't.
Well, let's go deeper with that.
Yeah.
I agree. And I'm grateful the clarification of weak leadership. I think this was the biggest factor. Look at the absolute evisceration Trump has gotten since he said tariffs are going to come. They're going to be big. It's something we need to do. And again, all of the Democratic leaders, from Obama to Pelosi to Schumer, you go down the list, Bernie Sanders, have talked about this exact plan for 30 years.
Yeah.
None of them had the guts to do it because of what we've seen in the last 45 days, meaning everyone thinks the sky is falling. Chicken Little is this will ruin us. This will send us into the worst than the Great Depression. And so I think what happened is, to your point, weak leadership, they got into a place where they're like, oh, this isn't good. So the story became everything is awesome, everything is awesome, everything is awesome. And then all the investors were like, yeah, I'll keep investing, driving the stock market higher and higher and higher. Everything's awesome. Kind of easy operations. We'll pare out money. We'll try to just keep everyone happy rather than this is going to suck. Some of you are going to lose jobs. It's going to be difficult for some businesses, but the long term in 5, 8, 10, 15, 20 years, doing this today is going to be better for everyone. And I think that is, as we talk about it, that is the difference. Because again, this is not a plan that those leaders didn't know needed to happen. They just, when it came down to it, they, for whatever reason, didn't have the gumption, didn't have the strength, didn't have the resolve to say, you're not going to like this, X, Y, Z voter. Right. This is going to seem painful to you, but this is the only way that we're going to create a different paradigm.
And that's kind of what we saw, right? There was a lot of negative news. The markets reacted negatively. Lots of volatility over the last several 2-3 months because of this uncertainty of trade wars, trade deals that the president was trying to negotiate, which you always talk about, negotiation tactics. And it seems like, in retrospect, the other leadership that just got out either didn't want to handle the tough calls, the tough negotiations, because of all of the negative that can come with that and the uncertainty and volatility.
Yeah.
Just take the easier way out.
And I think you're seeing, we've talked often about Bill Maher. That's just an example on I would say, the Democratic Party, one of like, hey, you got to quit doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think there's so few calling it out. It's where, you have this play by the party. It's like, oh, well, if we just appease to the loudest people, that's what's going to keep us in office. And in some cases it has. And now, we've talked a little bit about it. I've talked to, others about it. It's like California is about to really turn.
I think so.
In a big way.
Yeah.
In regards to, we talked about the LA sheriff. You have other leaders that are saying, this is dumb. We can't keep doing what we're doing. This is not working.
Yeah.
And I think that's as that continues to swell over the next months and years, I think that could have a major impact in the entire Democratic Party.
Yeah, it seems like there's going to be. I know we're shifting, obviously, U.S. China deal, but I think it's important.
Well, it all ties together, I think.
Yeah, no, it does. I think there will be some sort of transformation within the Democratic. I mean, there has to be, just because it's so splintered. It feels like, where you have the Bill Maher's of the world, and then the Rachel Maddows, or I don't think she's on air anymore.
Well, I mean, you go to those. I would say moderate, as we often talk about. I'll say first and foremost, like, I'm not necessarily behind like everything egregious MAGA. Like, just don't be so in your face.
Yeah,
And it's just kind of like whatever. And it's like, understand there it's a very much nuance, but have common sense, protect people, and yet at the same point, there's this doubling down on. I think there's truly this leadership element. I've seen this. I've talked about it. I've gone through conferences, trained about it. Is when you're too afraid to stand up for what's right because of the concern of what's going to happen to you.
Yeah,
and that is something that is just.
Yeah, a little frozen there. But I would say this: one of the things that, and I'm not a registered Democrat or Republican.
All right, I'm back.
Yeah, you're
I'm
back. You're
back.
back.
I'm back.
No,
You don't know what happened.
I was going to finish up my thought.
Go
It's
for
more
it.
of like, be a critical thinker, right? Look at whoever you voted for, or whoever's in leadership. Analyze what they're doing. There's things Trump does that I don't like. He uses the word
Same.
stupid a lot. I don't. It's like.
I actually have a translation of the Bible. It's called the Good News Bible, and it actually has stupid in there quite often. And I didn't know growing up reading the Bible that there were different translations. I just had no idea. And so one day I'm reading it to Kelly, my wife, and she's like, "Stupid? It has stupid." I'm like, "Yeah, like that's how it was translated." So I don't mind
Yeah,
that
it's
so
funny.
much.
And that's the thing. It's like, I might not agree with that. Some people might find it funny. I think it's like, it doesn't come across, like strong leadership, in my opinion, to some of the way he approaches things. But like,
The
if you,
combativeness is what's
yeah,
difficult.
yeah, and it's like, that's fine. Like, I don't have to agree with everything he does, and that's it. And that's where I think so many, and why I love the conversation, referencing again, like Bill Maher has done, and what's his name, Charlie Kirk. You
Yeah.
could you could sit down and debate and not agree, and then
Well,
shoot hoops, or have enjoy life, right?
yeah,
It's like, no
those are
need to
two prime
go hyper.
examples.
Yeah,
Going back to Charlie Kirk being on Gavin Newsom's show, Charlie Kirk being with Bill Maher, Charlie Kirk having, and I would say he's probably one of the, he's the up and coming voice in the kind of conservative Republican, he's that voice in that party. I think Bill Maher has been identified, you know, I don't think that's a stretch to say he's a voice within the Democratic, I would say, liberal movement, right?
yeah,
Maybe I'm wrong. If you're, someone better, different, please put in the comments. But I think when you look at their premise, and again, this is tying back to the China Trump deal, we would have never gotten here if Trump wouldn't have said, "It stops. I'm going to play hardball."
yeah.
Right. And sometimes you have to do that, but he was willing to sit down. Like, I think hopefully you watched the news conference last week with Mike Carney and Donald Trump. And it was hilarious to a point where it's like, yeah, this was a game the whole time along. If I just pander you and say how great you are, you're going to think you're in power and you're never going to come to the table because that's what you've done to us for decades. So I have to essentially piss you off enough and poke at you enough because I'm really the one, and this isn't an arrogance, but I'm the one holding all the cards.
Yeah.
I have all the chips. I have the biggest country economy in the world.
Right.
I'm the leader of that. And you're taking advantage of us, and I'm sitting here saying it's got to stop. And instead of saying, "Oh no, let's play nice and fair," it's like, "No, I hold all the cards. You come to my table. I need to stop just going to everyone's table and saying, 'Oh, please be nice, please be nice, please be nice.' No, stop being mean
Yeah.
Now, the tactics, I think that's where you and I both agree. It's like, but I understand if it wasn't for that.
Everyone has a style.
Yeah, if it wasn't for that, I don't think we'd be here. Because even Obama talked a lot about this during his presidency. And I think when push came to shove, people were like, oh, he doesn't have the guts to like out me, to like cut me off. Trump,
Right.
oh, dude, don't do it. It's like, you're fired.
You're
You're
fired.
fired.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
you're gone.
just,
Tough.
but,
Yeah, tough negotiator.
well, but here's the thing. And this is where it's interesting that the different people that have sat down with Trump, that have gone on to air, Bill Maher to the Charlie Kirks to the Mike Johnsons to the people that are around him, eh, regardless of party. Even when you see him and his rapport with Obama is actually very cordial.
Yeah, it is.
You go back to the Jimmy Carter ceremony, memorial service.
Memorial. Yeah.
And Obama and Trump are like buddies. Like they understand their place. It's like, hey, we're both in this job. There's only been 40 couple of them, not
Yeah.
even 40 of them, because some of them I've done twice, but it's just like, hey, we got to work together. And it's
Yeah.
that rapport that people have with them off the screen when he's not in front of a camera per se,
Yeah.
or even in front of a camera where he's just like, he's he really is, like, as people tell the stories. Like, I was watching something, like, I was shooting, I forget who it was. He was shooting something with Trump. It ended up that his child was in the room, and Trump pretty much ignored the person and absolutely endeared the child, talked to the child, encouraged the child, like what you would want of someone in a
Yeah.
leadership role of just taking care of people. And you get those reports all the time. And
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, do you think they're going to make a deal within the next 90 days, or is this going to be dragged on beyond 90 days?
oh, it'll happen the 11th hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Last day, yeah.
yeah, and I mean, I think that's where some of these deals will continue on. Like, there's supposedly a
August.
report coming out about, something big with Canada, whatever. It's going to
It's
be continued stringing along. The whole Ukraine. Now we have Ukraine and, France and, Zelensky and Macron and I forget the German chancellor, all caught on a train supposedly with drug paraphernalia. I mean, you can split that however you want. I don't know, this or that. But it's just kind of like, I think it's almost a point of, hey, we're going to be here. And when you get serious, we'll still be here. Because
right.
at the end of the day, every single country in the world outside of the US wants access to the US as a market and wants products from the US. And that's not being arrogant. That's just what's been proven.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
go around the world and it is extremely Americanized. You go, you find Nike, you find,
Everything.
Lululemon, you find, whatever Apple phones, you find whatever tangible product represents American culture, and people want it.
People want it. Yeah, it's true. I was in Morocco, last year. I mean, just driving around, you see people wearing Nikes and
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
fun.
mean, when you travel here in a few weeks, I think you guys are going to, you will see way more like, oh, that's American or that's an American style. Now, often their style is ahead of ours, but yet they, it's, I remember it's been 11 years ago when we were in Paris.
Mhm.
And I remember going at that point and they said, hey, European culture is different. European clothing is different. Like, just be aware, like what we would normally wear in America, see in the streets of America, is not going to fit. And it was interesting. It's like, okay, a little bit, like they're a little bit more, I would say, formal in their dress.
Yeah.
But you're walking around and anyone that was under 25 looked every bit American. Like, meaning, like you wouldn't have been able to discernibly tell a difference.
Right. For sure. For sure.
And I
It's
remember we were on the Champs Elysees, and there was an Abercrombie and Fitch.
everything.
Yeah, and
I
it's
mean,
just,
the world's gotten smaller and smaller, over the years as travel isn't more easily accessible to everybody, and how
yeah.
quickly you get across, and social media and
Well, I
everything.
mean, social media has made it. very flat. And I think that's where it comes back to, you know, here's a point. How much do you think, as much as, you know, you have the extent of North Korea, which is extremely insulated, right?
Yeah.
Don't let anything in. They've really tried to keep everyone stuck in a time period, no exposure to the Western world, wherever else. You have China, which is kind of like that, but not, because they are very open. It's almost like they've understood to have access to the great industrial, consumer system that is the U.S. They have to allow some of it, whether it's inviting people in to be production and or letting the products in. Here's the point: is how much do you think Chinese leadership is trying to walk this fine line between, we want access to America, but yet we have to be careful to give our people enough, but yet where they still hold on to the Chinese culture and values and um,
Yeah.
communist society?
I was going to say it's all about control.
Yeah,
Communism is
yeah,
all about control. How can
yeah,
we give them enough taste of the sweetness, but still be able to control
yeah,
everything? You
yeah,
know, and so that's like the fine line that they're toting is like, yeah, we'll give you access to this, but you can't access everything. There's certain things that are banned. Websites and online, like you, right? Here's
yeah,
the internet,
yeah,
but you don't have the full
yeah,
internet,
yeah,
right? Here's
yeah,
certain products and services, but you can't have everything, right? There's like
yeah,
control. There's
yeah,
always levers of control in that
yeah.
kind of environment.
Well, it's interesting. You think of, they've embraced basketball, U.S. basketball, American basketball. The players, they have a system, and it's interesting. Again, you go back to the days of Yao Ming and being in Houston with the Rockets, and it created a cultural revolution in Houston where it's become, really a Chinese bastion for people living in and around Houston from that point, in
Yeah,
like some heavy relationships between Houston Rockets and China. And you see those different things. It comes back to Chinese ownership of farmland in the US. We've talked about that and kind of where those plates are. Again, I think it's this very delicate balance. And so I think the next 90 days are again, we need them, they need us. We could be culturally more different, but yet there's a lot of intertwined.
there's too much money involved. Forget about billions. We're talking about trillions of dollars, in trade, between the two nations and the players all involved in that. It's just too big. They're going to work out a deal. They have to work out a deal. There's too much money involved. There's too much trade involved. And I think they, like you called it, I think we talked about it. There was always going to be a deal of some kind. Um, you have to kind of waver through the volatility.
Yeah.
Now it's I always find it funny. It's like right before summer. We got a deal. Now we can enjoy our summer, and then we'll renegotiate at the end of summer.
So, I mean, you think about that, 90 days would be due up the 1st of August. So,
Yeah, June, July, end of August, 90 days, right? Because mid August, somewhere like that.
yeah, give or take,
Yeah, give or take. So
something
but
like
it's
that.
funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's, game
Telling
on.
each other,
Yeah.
go. Yeah, it's like I got a vacation
Go buy
planned.
hey, make sure you get all your firecrackers, all of your, things for the 4th of July.
Memorial Weekend, Fourth of July.
All those things,
You know,
everything that ships on and off Amazon. I mean, that was one of the big factors in the last week, is saw a lot of Amazon suppliers like, we have to apply these tariffs. I have a friend who has a large Amazon business, and it's been something they've had to consider. How is this going to affect, what's it doing? And Amazon was probably one of the bigger, um, I would say, distribution channels that could be massively affected by the tariffs.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
One of them. I mean, yeah, cars, clothing, tons of products. I mean, just
yeah,
so much is made there. And these factories are all set up. The pipeline is all set
Yeah.
up. To
Yeah.
disrupt that, takes years. I know we want to build a lot more stuff here in the U.S., and I think we will over time. But we're talking about 5 years. Over the
Yeah.
next 5 years, it's going to take time.
So, as we wrap up and just thinking, if you had to project forward 90 days, right? We'll hold on to that 90-day, kind of ideology. How do you think these tariffs are going to play out in regards to the U.S. economy?
I think we're kind of, summer's going to grind away. We're going to kind of chop around sideways. I mean, job number, everything's going to kind of be in stagnation or just kind of be where it is. I don't think we're going to either go up or down, in job numbers or job growth, or anything. I think it's kind of going to be, where it is, off a few degrees. But then the fall is really where we'll see, some big movement of, where whether recession was a soft landing or a hard landing. Are we in one? Are we out? We're gonna be. They're gonna say in September or sometime near around then. It's like, oh, we were in a recession, now we're out of one. Or they're gonna say we're in a recession. It's like they're
Yeah.
gonna finally determine that, and then we're really gonna know like the Fed stance. I still think that that's another big part of this is like where the Fed stands, if they're gonna do
Hmm.
quantitative easing or quantitative tightening, or just remain the same. And I feel like they're gonna chill out in the summer. Everyone wants to go on
Yeah.
break, and we'll know more in early fall.
There's a thought coming to me, and we've talked about economically. One of the big facets from the election, one of the things that people asked for was um, either better cost of living it, describing that, more affordable housing, more affordable consumable products, the job market, however. The pure economics. You can't drive down prices of a product without an increase in supply because that's the economics, right? Now, the other way of doing that is lowering demand, which is kind of the same. I'm really curious to say, how are we going to drive down the price of a Big Mac? We went from, and I'm just being tongue in cheek, but I saw
Yeah.
something recently where it was kind of like the price of a Big Mac now compared to what it was 10 years ago. And, the 25 to 50% higher cost. And, that's kind of, again, relative is like, how do we get back to, pre-COVID economics, meaning the price of goods, the fuel prices to insurance costs to all of those. If you look at the expenditure of the average middle class American household, how do we drive those factors to where it's either a more digestible amount of overall income? That's what has me curious. We saw the interest rates held last week.
Yeah.
That's not going to reduce cost of whether it is expenses. That in and of itself is not going to reduce consumable prices because businesses that are operating with those credit lines still priced in. um, that to me is going to be very interesting. I think the other thing that is just getting going, and we saw I think it was just announced this morning, where Trump signed an executive order reducing pharmaceutical product costs, and a lot of it was attacking kind of their free reign on.
Yeah.
And I think that is again a piece to this conversation to say, man, how are we going to get back to where we feel like economically, hey, we're in a good place? I don't even know how to quantify that because I don't think anyone does. And I think this tariff discussion is part of it. But it's also like, all right, how do we navigate that? How do we make this work?
I mean, you've alluded to this in the past. It may take another. This year might just be a little bit tough. It's jobs. Is the jobs market going to get better? Are there going to be better paying jobs? Is that going to increase energy costs, right? You always allude to this. Energy is the key to a lot of this. Can reduce energy costs, which affects almost everything. And then there's the housing market, which I'm really keen on. There's pockets where it's getting cheaper and cheaper, and then there's pockets where it's not, and maybe that's kind of
Yeah.
where demand.
I,
They're
I
building a lot
think
certain areas.
kind of this idea that, and people have beat him up about it when Trump say, oh, inflation is gone. Well, understand that that means that every year prices aren't going higher. And if we've reached this place of stagnant pricing, that's really good. What we need to happen is to go to the point of what we've talked about, what people wanted for right to have a Big Mac instead of being $3.99. I don't even know how much Big Mac is. I'm just,
I don't know.
to go from $3.99 to $2.99 and people feel better about it. That's a 30% reduction in, and that's a 25% reduction in cost. So if we've seen this um, you know, massive escalation in prices, we need to see that massive of a de-escalation. And that's what I really wonder, how's that going to happen? Because you have companies like that don't want to give up. If they know I can get $4 from a consumer, I don't want to give that up. I want to keep those top line profits because now we're, a multi-billion dollar organization. We've never been there because of inflation. All of a sudden you go to shareholders say, hey, we made 4 billion last year. Now we're only 3 billion. Why is it? It's like, well, we took 25% out of
Right.
the total cost. Dude, that CEO's fired.
Yeah.
And like, there's no
Agreed.
comprehension of saying that,
Agreed.
oh, we had more profit, we had more total sales, even though our gross profit was lower. Like, our system doesn't work like that. To me, that has me very intrigued. How's that going to go forward?
We'll see. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we'll know more in the fall. My
Yeah.
prediction is
I mean,
we'll
time
see
will
it.
tell.
Time will tell.
Yeah, time will tell. All right. Well, thanks for being here. Remember to subscribe on YouTube, hit the bell for notifications. If you're watching on Facebook or LinkedIn Live, we'd love to have your comments to continue the conversation. We try to always follow up if we don't catch them in live to make sure we follow up. Would love to continue with you. Until next time, choose to lead with impact. Dude, I have no idea why it kept